you're good.
I would like to call this meeting to order. Before we start, I'd like to point out that Councillor Palmer will not be here tonight. He couldn't make it. Also, I would like to let you know that you are cordially invited to the Fire Hall and Public Works Building grand opening and ribbon cutting, plus the Fire Department North Huron swearing in and award ceremony, Thursday, June 23rd, 2022, from 4 to 8 p.m. at the Blythe Fire Hall Public Works Building at 685 Queen Street. Confirmation of the agenda that the council... Oh, yes, thank you very much. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is a traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Ottawa, and Mississaugas people. Confirmation of the agenda that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accepts the agenda for the June 20th, 2022 council meeting as presented. Do I have a mover? Anita moves. Seconder, Paul seconds. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Deputy Reeve Sight.
Thank you, Reeve Bailey. I just want to make note of, I do have a conflict of interest on an item on 5.2.1, which is the bills and accounts. Check number 508126 is made out to my spouse, Tiffany Sipe, for expenses related to her employment with the municipality, and I will not be commenting on the bills and accounts or approving them.
Thank you. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone, we'll move on. Public comments. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to an item of business on the agenda. 2 minutes per person. Do you want to speak to anything that's on the agenda? Okay, thank you. Consent agenda, which would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron... Actually, before I call it, I want to see if anybody wants to pull anything out to talk about on 5.1.2 to 5.3.7 and 5.1.1. Not, go ahead, Deputy Reeve Sight.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve Bailey. Just want to actually maybe a comment or a follow-up question to the Director of Public Works as it relates to 5.3.5, the letter from Mitch Wright, Andy McBride, Ralph Metcalf, and Rob Hutchison. I'm wondering if is it the intention of staff to respond to this letter or not? I guess is my question.
Through Reeve Bailey to Deputy Reeve Sight, staff can respond back to this letter.
Pardon me, I couldn't quite hear what you said there, Jamie. I couldn't hear what you said.
She said basically that staff can respond to the letter if council wants to provide that direction.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Through your, as a point of clarification, the council or the committee of council that they're referring to, it was dissolved, and the conditions were debated in council, and a decision was made by council, who ultimately has the last say in that procedure, whether a past panel of or committee of council has the responsibility to submission a letter such as this, or rather bring it up as a new something new, or come as a committee of call a company come up to talk to council. I just need some clarification on what actual rights and where this letter should have fell, rather than should have just been in correspondence, or just for information purposes only.
Yeah, maybe I can clarify. Yeah, so Councillor Falconer, you're certainly right. The House and Bridge Dam Committee, that was a committee of council, has since dissolved. They have satisfied their mandate, which was to make a recommendation to council. So that's why you will note the agenda item does not refer to them as the House and Bridge Dam Committee of Council. It has the names of the individuals who were tied to the letter. So at this point, council has provided direction. Staff are in the process of carrying out that direction. If council wishes to continue in that direction, staff can certainly send a letter back to those who wrote the letter. If council wanted to deviate from that direction, basically your motion to reconsider process, set out in your procedure bylaw would be what was required.
Thank you. Deputy Reeve Sight?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I'm asking the question about whether a response is going to be documented is this letter specifically states very clearly, it says council was given incorrect guidance. That's what it says. I think in reality, whether council believes that or not, I personally don't believe we have, but I mean, at least I haven't, nobody's been able to prove that we have or have not. What my concern is that the council has made a decision, and that's okay. I'm fine with the decision that council has made. I'm not suggesting reconsideration or anything like that. But what I am concerned about is when ratepayers make comment that says we have been given wrong information, I think it's in the due diligence of staff to provide these individuals with the recommendations that they gave based on information that we had at the time. And so answer the questions that are being asked. The question, irregardless of the issue, council has made a decision. And I can understand that there is going to be individuals within the community that don't agree with the decision that is made. That's not my point. My point is, there's clear indication here that they're indicating that council wasn't given all the information. What I'm asking is, if that is the case, if staff believe that isn't the case, then I think comment back to these people is warranted. If staff believe that they've given all the information and we are given all the correct information and we've not been incorrect guidance, then I think that also warrants a communication back to these individuals that state, we believe that we have not. Ignoring it isn't going to make it go away. And I think that's the point that I'm trying to understand, is that putting it in correspondence and having council understand and read the letter is one thing. But staff, in essence, if we're not going to send a response, and I'm not suggesting it has to be a 30-page document or it has to be whatever, but I think we have to acknowledge as staff and council that we got this information, staff have reviewed it, and responded in appropriate fashion. I think that's only fair etiquette in my mind. I'm not suggesting anything other than that. But that was my question. Is staff planning on, if staff wasn't planning on providing a response unless council gave them direction to do so, that's another question. And that's what I wanted to make sure and clarify tonight before we just pass this on.
So, yeah, so I guess to clarify then, so as of right now, it is on the consent agenda for information purposes. If council would like us to take further action, you can pull it from item 5.3.5 from the consent agenda, and staff can prepare a correspondence letter to respond to.
Just before we go any further, Councilor Falconer, Jamie would like to speak to this, our Director for Public Works, who is heavily involved in this.
Through Reeve Bailey to council, I don't mind putting together a response back for their letter. It will be a response again. They have received previous correspondence from myself and others, but again, we can respond back to this letter, but there has been communication back and forth.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, through you. The pretense that this has come towards to be in our correspondence has caused confusion, as they use their name of a committee that was not of council of many years ago, the House and Dam Committee, are saying that the information was incorrect that council saw. That committee was part of the House and Bridge and Dam Committee that gave us the results and the recommendations that council voted on. At no time at the end, when they were putting the resolutions, were they adamant about the information was wrong. And we haven't received any new information past the deadline of that committee. But the confusion that comes in when they're using a name that's almost as close, but was not involved in the process as that committee. The Committee of Council had 2 members from their committee in the decision-making. So, because it didn't fall in the majority of their decision, they've come back with this. I think it's, I don't know, it's a delay tactic or what it is. We all had the same information, and that was the purpose of the House and Dam and Bridge Committee, was to put everyone together and listen to all the reports that have been made since 1950 and up to this date, all the core drilling, the new stuff that we had done, to come to a conclusion. The information that they're commenting on is information that they provided. It wasn't done by the township. It was information that they had provided by an engineer that said that he could do it. So the committee that they're talking about in their letter is their committee, not our Committee of Council. So I don't see how they could claim that council got the wrong information. Just because it's not their information, they're bringing it back to light. So I don't know how you go forward from there.
Further discussion. We have 2 councillors, one of one opinion, one of the other. Go ahead, Trevor.
Well, actually, Reeve, me and Councillor Faulkner are on the same opinion. The the committee's provided a recommendation, council's made a vote. That is the democratic process in which we followed. All my comment is that if we are not going to respond to this letter, and the Director of Public Works has indicated that there has been correspondence that maybe the group is not willing to accept. I don't know. All I'm saying is if that is the case, if they've been given correspondence as to the answers to their questions of this or this comments to this specifically, then I'm okay. That's all I'm wanting to make sure, is that we're not just taking the information and then never responding and think it's going to go away, because I think we've realized that it's not going to go away. And that's all my comment. I am completely in agreement with Councillor Faulkner. There's nothing that we can do right now unless council wants to reconsider. And I don't know, based on the discussion that we had in the past, there hasn't been a discussion to reconsider. And I mean, that's the comment that has to reconsider, is people that are not of you, Reeve, or myself. So unless they're willing to reconsider, there isn't going to be a reconsideration, so we move forward. Mm-hmm. The comment really is to make sure that we're having some relation or correspondence back from the staff to this. If staff believe that they've provided adequate enough correspondence, then I'm happy. I'm fine. I just needed clarification from staff that, yes, they've been given clarification, yes, they've been provided documentation, and yes, we're okay with carrying on.
Thank you. Can I hear from staff now, maybe the CAO, how he feels, or maybe Mrs. McCarthy, one or the other, if you feel you've done enough, because we don't want, I mean, we can't keep dragging this up. As far as I'm concerned, the answers are all there. We know where we need to move forward on. And yeah. Go ahead, Jamie.
Yes, through Reeve Bailey. All of the information that's been gathered through all the engineers and everything has been provided to council. So we're all aware of what's occurring. There are plans that we're working on right now that I don't have all the answers to, because it takes time to create those plans, the drawings, and make sure that we're able to meet all of the requirements through the regulations from DFO and from MNRF to make sure that we're able to not only remove the dam, but make sure everything's going to be okay after. So some of the Some of the requests that are within that letter, I don't have the answers to. But anything that I could have provided has been provided in the past and has been provided not only by myself, but from others.
Thank you. CEO, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I think just in terms of, I'd just like to echo the comments in terms of all the information that has been and is publicly available information. So council has everything, as did the committee at the time. So there's no new information. But I think, as the director has correctly pointed out, you know, there are next steps or further work to be done. If anything, what we could do, if council so wishes, is respond and indicate so that, you know, the information is publicly available, and we're unable to answer the questions at this time, but, you know, as we can, we'll answer those questions.
Would council be favorable of that answer, or just, would you prefer just not to answer?
Reeve Bailey, based on the comments from the director, I don't think that group needs to have any more information than this council. So, I mean, if the answers can't be answered because we don't know the answers, then we don't know the answers. I mean, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that response. I think we can be realistic, is that the writers of this letter are going to be watching. So I don't think we need to, you know, drag it out with more correspondence or anything like that. If staff believe that the answers to the questions that they provided have been given, I'm happy with that answer. If there isn't answers that we can give because we're not far enough down the path yet, then I'm okay with that as well. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Not seeing or hearing any, then that one will sit. So I'm going to go back to that the Council Township of North Huron hereby adopts consent items 5.1.1, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.2 to 5.3.7 for information purposes. Do I have a mover? Rick McBurney moves. Seconder is Paul Heffer. All in favor? Carries. Five 5.3.6, the Town of East Grimsley. Oh, sorry, we did that. My apologies. Number 6, public meetings and hearings and delegations, zoning bylaw amendment file Z01-2022. Planner Holman, would you like to come up and... Oh, she's on her way already.
Thank you, Council, for having me this evening. I'm just going to bring up my presentation. So as stated, the following is a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment file Z01-2022. The subject lands are located on 40 Josephine Street in Wingham. The owner is 2441716 Ontario Inc., and their agent is Antec Design and Engineering. In terms of the subject property, as stated before, it is located at 40 Josephine Street in Wingham. Council will recall that this is the location of what's called the McDonald's Plaza. So you have the new McDonald's development, and then as well there is a new building that is going up on the northern end of the property that will contain commercial units. So the property is designated highway commercial. It is also zoned highway commercial. The following shows site visits of a portion of the site, again showing the newer building with the 2 commercial units. In terms of the proposed amendment, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to permit an additional, is to allow for a special zone to permit an additional pharmacy use on the property whilst maintaining the existing permitted uses on the property. A pharmacy use is otherwise directed to the core commercial zone, which is typically, your downtown areas, such as in Wingham. In terms of a planning review, the zoning bylaw was considered against the provincial policy statement in the Huron County official plan policies, which generally speak to the viability of downtown traditional main streets, and also allowing commercial uses in settlement areas such as Wingham. The North Huron official plan does provide some more specific direction to proposals such as this. The official plan does require that in the area identified as the grouped commercial area, so that's the highway commercial area that's on the southern portion of Wingham, that they be accompanied with a retail market study to justify the use. The intent of this policy and the purpose of the market study is to identify whether there is insufficient space in the core commercial area to accommodate the proposed use, which in this case is a pharmacy use, which is otherwise typically directed to your core commercial areas, and whether there is sufficient market need in the regional area to justify an increase in the proposed larger space, as typically highway commercial areas or group commercial areas are larger in size in terms of their unit size. The terms of reference for the market study was approved by council in December 2021. As the approval by council of this terms of reference is required by the township official plan policy. And that terms of reference was prepared in consultation with the applicant's consultant with the township's hired peer reviewer. The market study and peer review did conclude that there was a justification for the proposal, and specifically the larger location of the pharmacy at this subject land, moving from their existing location was justified. The market study concluded that there would be no detrimental impact on the downtown core, specifically for the pharmacy use, because the additional space in the highway commercial area is warranted, and there is more than sufficient demand in the market to accommodate this new location as well as existing locations in the core commercial area. So the peer reviewer did conclude that the proposal is justified for a market basis, and this informed my recommendation to council. The property was also considered against other relevant township official plan policies, particularly with regard to technical site specifications, and these policies were met. The subject property was previously subject to site plan control. So in terms of comments, as of current, no comments have been received from members of the public in writing. Township staff, County Public Works, and the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority were all circulated on the application, and no concerns were expressed. In terms of the recommendation, it is recommended that the zoning bylaw amendment be approved. And just a reminder to council that a second motion to the effect of public and agency comments will also be required after the public meeting. So I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Does anybody have a question for Hannah?
So you'll want to go through the steps in the public meeting first.
Yeah, she always does that to me, doesn't she? This 6.1.2 is an opportunity to comment by applicant or their agent.
Sorry, Ms. London's done a great job summarizing the projects. I'm here if anyone has any questions.
Okay, thank you very kindly. Is there anyone else? I'm going to say no because the crowd is pretty thin tonight. Opportunity and questions and comments from council members now. Oh, sorry. Opportunity to comment by others in attendance. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this? Not seeing anybody. Opportunity for question comments from council members. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Rafe. This edition of a pharmacy, I mean, it's come before council on the master plan and the market study before. Do we know, is this an addition to the existing two pharmacies, or is it replacing one of the pharmacies? Like, are we adding competition to the two that we already have?
Right.
Or that,
Okay.
that is the...
Yeah, through Reeve Bailey, Councillor Faulkner. So I'll start with what the intent of the market study. The intent of the market study really focused more on the justification for the additional space, so having it in the additional zone, as well as it also looked at the square footage of that, and it looked at it more from a holistic perspective, and is that additional space, is that able to be accommodated in the regional market? And the study did conclude that that's able to be accommodated. It didn't necessarily look at, in this case specifically, I understand from the applicants that the tenant is an existing downtown tenant, and they are proposing to move to this location, but it didn't really look at specifically trying to prevent that. It just looked at, can additional space outside the core commercial be accommodated for the pharmacy use, which it concluded it was justified.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Trevor, Deputy Site.
Yeah, I mean, the results from the study doesn't surprise me in the sense that if you look basically straight across the way from the study, there's a pharmacy. So the intention of saying that the bylaw to allow a pharmacy in that area, I think we would have a hard time as council denying it, other than the fact of whether the market study allowed the market to even, and I mean, that's one of the reasons why they did the market study, to ensure that they could have, and it would be able to suffice and survive in that market. But in saying that, I use the sole example is, as council, do I necessarily matter what is going in the building? Not really. I mean, the owners of the building need to ensure that the market allows what they can have, and to ensure that it's going to be viable and sustainable for their purposes. I mean, as a municipal councillor, what has been the hope and dream of every municipal councillor in North Huron for a while? Increased tax revenue. Well, what does this building do? It does that. So, I mean, from my perspective, it's a win-win in the sense that it's being developed and it has been developed. Do I fear a little bit in the sense where, we have an existing tenant that is in the downtown core, potentially, is it going to truly, really impact the downtown core and how it looks and how it thrives? I don't know. I mean, the peer review indicated that it isn't supposed to impact it. But I mean, that tenant in the downtown core has been a long-standing tenant for many, many years. So, I mean, I can understand, but also understand that their growth potential in that downtown core is limited. So, I mean, can I understand their business model? Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad that there has been looked at it, and I'm glad the market was done, the study was done, and I'm glad that they've came with this hope and with this plan. To me, I think it's a win-win in reality, and I accept that not everybody is going to believe that it's in the best interest of the town for that to happen. But in all reality, we have a lot of things that are duplications and triplicates and a whole bunch of other things. I think we need to look at ensuring that the market is available and can accommodate, because I can tell you right now, these pharmacies in the township of North Huron are not just accommodating residents of North Huron. They're accommodating a larger scaled, Huron County market that I think we have to understand that's not the intention of them. They're not just to serve us. They're to serve the broader scope and the broader society and demographic as we all age. So I appreciate the planner's information. I appreciate the comments that haven't been heard by, from everybody here from the site plan. And it's been a long process, and I accept the recommendations as per the planner's request.
Thank you very kindly, Deputy Reeve. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move along. 6.1.5, zoning bylaw procedure following a public meeting. This is a public meeting of council of the Township of North Huron. Thus, a decision of council may or may not be made this evening on the zoning bylaw amendment. If the bylaw is passed by council, the clerk is required to send notice of the passing of the bylaw to persons or public bodies that have made written requests to be notified of the decision. There is a 20-day objection period from the time of the notice passing of the bylaw has been mailed by first-class post, where within submissions, letters of objections or support in respect to the passing of the bylaw will be received by the clerk. If an objection is received, an appeal is lodged with the Ontario Land Tribunal, and at that point, the township no longer has any control over the time factor involved. If council does not pass a bylaw, the applicant may appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If the bylaw is passed and no objections are received within the objection period, the clerk certifies that the bylaw is enforced and effective of the date of its passing, and notice is forwarded to the county, Huron County Planning and Development Department. Okay. So summary of comments and recommendations from the Huron County Planner is next. Anna?
Thank you, Reeve Bailey. So in terms of the recommendation, it is recommended that council select option A2, that no public comments were received on this application, so there was no effect on the decision, and that option B3 be selected, that agency comments were received and supported the application, the effect of which resulted in a decision to approve the application.
Okay, so we'll start with the first motion that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the zoning bylaw amendment file number 01-2022 as it applies to registration plan 410 part of Block B, Wingham Ward, Township of North Huron, 40 Josephine Street. Do I have a mover? Rick moves, Bernie moves, Kevin Faulkner seconds. All in favor? Carries. Second motion is that the zoning bylaw amendment file number Z01-2022 as applies to the registered plan 410 part Block B, Wingham Ward, Township of North Huron, 40 Josephine Street, be sufficed with A2 and B3. Do I have a mover? Paul Heffer moves. Anita Hittersum seconds. All in favor? Carries. Thank you very much. Anita? Sorry, I'm having a terrible night. Heather?
Hannah?
Hannah?
All good. Thanks, all.
Thank you very kindly.
There goes the audience.
Okay, 7 reports. We have no clerk's report, financial department, or rec reports tonight. We have 7.4.1 is potential cemetery bylaw amendments. Are there any questions or concerns for this?
So with this one, your worship, so we will actually need direction, so there will need to be an amendment made to that motion.
Yeah, so I did not mention the motion in case somebody else wanted to. So we'll start with questions, concerns, or comments. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, through you, Reeve. Reading the proposed changes, I'm just wondering if enough time for consultation has been provided, that we could hear from people in the industry that use it and what's their preferences. I know there's a letter through from one funeral home as to what was to be decided. I was wondering if that letter came through in time to be in consultation with the requested changes, or whether we need a little bit more time.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Jamie.
So through Reeve Bailey to Councillor Faulkner, the way that the changes need to be made is that if any changes are to come about, we are required to provide a notification period as well as substantial amount of notices mailed out, as well as posted at our cemeteries and put in the paper. So if a change was to be made, we couldn't just agree to a change right now. It would have to go through an entire process, similar to, I want to say, the planning process, where you have to send out notifications, you have to post a sign, you also have to get comments back from people that this may affect, which is our residents, and as well as all the funeral directors in our area, in our catchment area. So if any adjustments are going to be made that may affect residents or businesses, we then have to start the process of going through, doing the notification period, setting up meetings, making sure that our bylaw is then, any changes then are sent to the BAO, and then finally that all comes back to council. So this, if we start down the path of changing anything, especially when it comes to anything that may impact a resident or a business, that would be, even hours of operation, I would say, indicates, is one of the things. So we would still require communication and meetings with all the funeral directors, again, in our catchment area. In looking at the way that we are structured, it did go through quite a large change back in 2018. So at this time, staff, although there is some some changes that staff is proposing. It, at this time, the amount of changes that we're looking at, it is recommended that opening up the bylaw does not occur at this time.
Go ahead, Kevin.
As a follow-up, then what triggered this report to come forward? Was it a, okay, that's fine.
To read Bailey to Councillor Faulkner, during the budget process, council actually motioned that I bring this to you. So that was what I did.
Go ahead, Anita.
Thank you, Reeve Bailey. Yeah, I have a question. I found the hours that Public Works has available for helping people with funerals and the digging of the graves and that sort of stuff very short. How many people within Public Works are available to help you with on the cemetery? What all has to be done there, and what times are they available? Are they just till 3 in the afternoon, or nobody will have a funeral at 7 in the morning? So I don't understand if there could be like a rotating schedule or something like that or do you still have to change the bylaw for that, or the whole process, what's needed?
Bailey to Councillor Van Hersum, depending on if the hours of operation are of concern, and that is something that that then we want to change, then we go through the process of notification period, meetings, advertisements, and then finally putting everything through the BOA. That takes months. It's not something that's quickly completed. Currently at the cemeteries, so we have Blythe and Wingham, and we have two staff members, but they're not at the cemeteries full time. They also have other tasks added to their everyday work. They're public works, they are parks and properties, and they are also cemetery. So when a funeral comes in, depending on what it is, and everything is different, whether it's a cremation, a full casket burial, and some full burials also have vaults. So there's different things that need to be scheduled when it comes to a funeral. These hours were established in 2018, and I know COVID did change things up a little bit, but if there's any deviation that needs to occur from what's already set, then I think more research is required, and then that can come back to council. We say, this is what I've found, here are service levels, depending on what the cemetery, how they operate, because everyone operates differently. That's a lot more data that I would have to come back to provide, because there are some townships or municipalities that have cemeteries, but they're all volunteer-based. So they're run with a board, or they have dedicated 100% cemetery staff, and there's also others that have a combination like we do. So their hours may be longer or different, but it's because they need to accommodate the people that do the work.
So, may I follow up?
Yes.
So, if I understand you correctly, you have only 2 part-time people who can help at the cemetery. Is there a chance that within your department that you can find some more people who will help with that, or is it a very specific task that those people have to do?
Through Reed Bailey to Councillor Van Hittersum, it depends on the task. So in order for a location to be completed, those are only the people that are trained to do that is currently only just 1. We have a new employee, and he's learning how to do that, but then there'll be 2. But if it's to assist in digging or in mostly just digging, then yeah, sometimes they do need to pull from public works staff.
Okay, thanks.
I'm going to go to Paul and then back to Kevin.
Yes, through you, Reeve. Yes, Jamie, I read the report, and then also we have a letter here. I just feel we have due diligence with looking maybe into this a bit more, like with You mentioned the workers, you have to go through the different directors and whatnot. I think it's only fair that maybe we give that some consideration and see what we can come up, because Wingham is growing, and it's a retirement town, so we know it's going to keep going this way, that I feel we should be looking at maybe a bit overhaul. You say it's not going to be done overnight, and I truly understand that. But I feel we owe this to our taxpayers, and they're the ones paying us. I feel this is something that can't be set aside, that we should maybe look at this much further. Thank you, Reeve.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kevin.
I thank you, through you, Reeve. What are some clarifications as to why we don't have 3 cemeteries under our care when there are 3 in our municipality? And why that's not incorporated? Why that wouldn't, through amalgamation, that wasn't done? Why is it done differently there than it is done in the other 2 places?
You're talking Belgrave?
Yes.
Yeah. There's actually we have a, yeah.
Brandon,
4, okay.
Brandon Cemetery.
Yeah. Staff have any answer to who
Sorry.
runs Brandon?
Through Reeve Bailey to Councillor Faulkner, I can look into that and get back to you, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Because there are 4 cemeteries. Thank you, Reeve, or Councillor McBurney, for bringing that up. There are 2 in Blythe. Well, actually, only 1 in Blythe. The other one is in Central Huron.
Yeah, kind of hearing from council that we maybe should take a step back from what's on the agenda today and have a further investigation into this. I'm hearing the time slots are a bother, and apparently there's another cemetery that we should maybe replicate what they're doing, if they're doing it successfully, or if it's being used, or maybe it's closed. I honestly don't know. I'm not going to pretend to. Go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, cemetery in Belgrave is run by a cemetery board.
Cemetery board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if they're all volunteers or not. I don't know how it works, but.
And as a reiteration, there are 2 in the confines of Blythe. So I don't want to make constituents knowing that I don't know where their ancestors are, but we have 2 pioneer ones in there, right within the town. So
Yeah, there are more. There's one close by us too.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just think they should all
So they're
get
close.
one envelope.
Wondering of council. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, through you, Reeve Bailey. What it sounds like to me is we gotta restructure some of the staff duties and stuff, by the sounds of it. With some of the problems we've been having within the township, in regards to grass cutting, cemeteries, the whole match. That's my feeling, sorry.
No need to be sorry. I think every councilor's had this topic on their phone conversation several times. Go ahead, Trevor.
So the one thing I will say, though, I was a member of council in 2018. I can honestly tell you I don't recall any comment by anybody as it relates to when we made the change. I don't know whether it was a negative or a positive or what. Now, in following up with the Director of Public Works comment, 2018 immediately ended with COVID in 2019, which therefore caused the kerfuffle about the whole entire thing for the last 3 years. So I have to recognize that, I think in the one respect is the cemetery is a service, no different than any other service that we own. We have to service the needs of the municipality and therefore people outside of it. But in true reality, the service is to the municipalities, to the ratepayers of North Huron, period. If a resident from North Huron wants to get buried in the Wingham or Blythe Cemetery, maybe their rules aren't the same as somebody who wants to be buried in Wingham or Blythe that are coming from London or Toronto or wherever. I don't necessarily disagree with the changes. However, I do suggest that we have to look at the fact that, we set the rates. right? Like, we set the price of burials and all that type of stuff. And those rates should be dependent upon the laws of averages, in my mind. Yes, there's going to be some that don't require overtime. There's going to be some that require overtime. The laws of averages usually even out. That's my math. That's the way, that's how I work in accounting, and I use laws of averages, because you're not going to win at everyone, but if you service the majority of the people using the laws of averages, you're more likely to satisfy the ratepayers in essence. Because in reality, the people who are being buried and in that cemetery are the ones, in essence, paying for the site. They're paying for it, and therefore they're paying for the maintenance as after the fact. So, I mean, I think we have to look at it, the fact that if the changes in 2018 did a disservice to the residents of North Huron, in Wingham and Blythe, or both, or whoever, then I think it needs to be evaluated. The one question and those are my comments, Reeve, I think I do have one question as it relates to, Director McCarthy's comment about, so if we go down the path, there's a whole lot of meetings. So my question is there no meetings before you start the so if we want to make a change, per se, and we get comments from directors or funeral directors and businesses and ratepayers that have a different opinion about where we should be, is all of those processes inside after we start the opening of the bylaw? Is that the intent, or is it getting all the information ahead of it, then opening the bylaw? It seems to me like you're saying we open the bylaw, as soon as we recommend to open the bylaw, then the process begins of notifications and all that stuff. But I'm not sure what we're notifying them of, because we're actually wanting their feedback as to the changes we want to make, not necessarily that we've already decided to make a change. I think that's where, I'm looking at it as, we want to make a change for whatever reason. Maybe it's operational, maybe it's capital, whatever. We have people who want to make comment based on the service, not necessarily operational or whatever. They just want to make comment as it relates to the service that we're offering. My concern is that if we go down the path and making notifications and all that stuff, are we then going to have to, when it comes back, and make changes upon the changes that we want to make? Do we have to redo the notification period again? We're opening a change because of changes that we as the municipality want to make. But what I'm also hearing from rest of council is council is looking at, we want to get feedback from all these other industries and partners and support before we make these changes that we want to make. Because the impact of these changes are going to be felt by somebody. And I'm thinking if we have that comments before we open it, then we would be more apt to get, traction or feedback, as opposed to go down this 7-month path of no return and then get to the 7th hour and find out that there's some issue or something, and now we've got to make a change upon a change. I'm just wanting your comment as to the process of opening it versus, gathering all the data based on the data and the recommendations are make a fit, and then with a recommendation, then we start the notification process. Because I think we would get more traction if we do it that way rather than the other. Just a comment for you.
So just before you speak, I think what we just did is we asked you a little while ago to look into this, right? And then you have looked into it and brought information to us and are requesting a decision or comments. Go ahead.
Through Reed Bailey to Deputy Sipe. In 2018, staff recommended changes to the bylaw. There was quite a few items that concerned staff and also wanted staff staff wanted to provide further protection upon the municipality. So they brought these, recommendations to council, and through correspondence, through council meetings, that was, I guess, seen as a valid reason to open up the bylaw. At that point, then meetings were had with the, notices were put out, meetings were had with the funeral directors, and then any feedback that they provided were then incorporated into the potential changes that might be made within the bylaw. And then the bylaw was sent off to the BAO and then brought back to you guys for approval. The change now is council requested that we look into the hours of operation. As far as the only comments I've received are maybe 3 for different hours of operation, and then the overall direction from council. So to open up the bylaw based on 3 comments back would really ultimately come from your direction. As overall, the other funeral directors within our catchment area have not spoken up about issues in regards to our services. But council did motion that this be looked into. So staff looked at the bylaw, and out of the entire bylaw, there was only about the hours of operation as requested that we looked at, and maybe 1 or 2 other changes that could be made. But ultimately, if we then start going down the path of having meetings and notification periods, yes, we will have comments and we'll get more feedback from them and then provide them to you. But asking, and we could always ask the residents and the funeral directors for comments on the bylaw preemptively. I think I'm failing at my words here, because it wasn't asked of us from them. It was only, I don't know how to, sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, part of the discussion that's been had here tonight is there was some comments made by a funeral director that were sent to the council. Whether you've seen them or not, I don't know. All I can tell you is some of the comments that I'm seeing in that letter. The concern I have is that there's a lot of comments in that letter, that communication, that really would have been nice to know in 2018 when we made the changes. So I'm not really sure it's a conversation about the director of public works, and the concern is that how does the correspondence of concerns or comments received by people being communicated back to council as it relates to the impact of these changes that are potentially being made. I mean, that's the concern, I think, from what is happening. I think not necessarily your perspective itself, Jamie, because you've been asked to do a certain task during the budget deliberations, and I understand what you've done. You've done exactly what you were asked to do. The comments, though, are being made is because I think what's happening is that what has been changed in 2018 has truly impacted the level of service that we're offering. And at that particular time in 2018, and I, as your only sitting councillor in 2018, I don't recall any of these comments being provided to me in 2018. Does it mean that they weren't? I am not going to take that because I can't remember what I ate yesterday. But I want to make sure that there is a process that, if council's making a change to a bylaw, that we have direction or we have all the information from not only staff, but the public and the public's commentary. And I don't know whether we did. And that's, I think, the concern that we have. And if we go down this path again, and we have those comments and those things there, is it too far down the line before it comes back to council to actually make the change to the bylaw, is my concern. Because if you then make all those notification periods, you've already started the process. Now you've got to come back and maybe make another motion to do something different. right? So that's why I want to make sure that we're having the communication first, then staff, council, and public, let's get all on the same page and what we can satisfyingly work with and say, yeah, is everybody going to agree? No, let's not say we're all going to agree, because we're not. But we then can go down the path of all of us on the same page, or at least have an understanding of what the page is, rather than, it's signed off and then 2 or 3 years down the road, we're getting comments about issues we made in 2018, because that's exactly what we did.
Yep.
So I think that's the comments we have, Reeve. And I mean, I honestly, in all reality, it's imperative that we're not really talking about information. If the Director of Public Works hasn't got that letter, then
She has it.
then we have to deal with that. But if she has it, I get it. I mean, that's the comments that we're having here tonight. But I mean, ultimately, we have to make sure that the comments by the public aren't being trumped by just because we as council think it's different. And if it's an issue in 2018 that never came to council and wasn't resurfaced, then that's a problem that I have as a sitting councilor, that we didn't hear we made these changes and what the potential impact of the service level was going to be.
Paul, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Reeve. All I was getting out of this, the biggest comment, that they accept the time on the Saturday from 9 a.m. to 12. They accept that. They feel that the 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., I think Councillor Van Henderson mentions that's not hitting. If something goes a bit longer, it just causes some confusion. So I think if that was hit with the director of Public Works and the funeral person, I think that would save a lot of headaches. But that's just my thought. But I just hate to open everything up if you could just switch some that hour around of the workday there. That's just my thought. Thank you, Reeve.
We're going to give it to Anita, and then Kevin, and then I'd like to speak.
Yes, thank you, Reeve Bailey. I certainly think that during times when you have a funeral, that nobody is really interested in communicating with a councillor about what is good or what is not good about our bylaws. I think they mostly communicate with the funeral directors, and I think they are very much aware of what concerns or what people are concerned about. I think it's also important to look what our neighboring communities are doing, and if we have to open up the bylaw for that, I think that's what we have to do, because that is what people expect from us. Better service around cemeteries.
Kevin.
Thank you, through you. I'm just curious as to some of the problems listed for the discussion about premium rates on Saturdays and overtime, statutory holidays, and tournament services not being available, and the 7 till 3 p.m. and the 9 till 2. Are some of these changes, were they instigated by the change in our policies through the municipality for our workers in the having to take time off now in lieu of overtime? And I'm just curious as why, like, 2 o'clock doesn't seem to be time that would be allocated that would have to be in overtime. And they have to take time off anyway. I just was curious as to why those were mentioned in this report. That it would cost us more overtime and exceeding 40 hours a week. They're not asking for 40 hours a week.
I'm wondering at this point if I could suggest that if we could have a motion for the Director of Works to withdraw this request and come back with further information after she spoke to public entities, whether it be funeral homes. I was first made aware of this, to be quite honest, at a funeral by a very angry priest. That's that's years ago. That's a couple years back. We've had COVID. We've had everything going on. Nobody expects anybody to jump over hoops or to change anything. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking that if we were to investigate a little further, it would also give our staff opportunity that we needed to put the hours back on to readjust their budget for next year. So I'm not, I don't think any of us are expecting anything overnight, but I think we would be wise to make sure that all the participants that are involved in this have a conversation. And as Jamie knows, everything's in writing, because if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist in the corporate world, hasn't in my lifetime. And get it all together, and then let Jamie, then to your suggestion, just do it all at once and be done with it. Because as you said, this isn't just a matter of passing a bylaw and Bernie signs it. This has to go above and beyond. So I think what Jamie's saying is, these few little things, even though they're little, we still have to do that. So we should be doing everything at once and being done with it. And if we involve everybody, then as a council and as a township moving forward, we can say, no, everybody was involved because we went out of our way to make sure. We could look at boards or whatever, because we have a board right here in Belgrave and see how they're operating. There's many alternatives, but I'm not sure how to put that motion together. Carson, can you help me there? Did I make a motion, or would you like somebody else to, or?
So I don't necessarily have the direction right now. I guess Jamie needs direction of, does council want her to initiate the process to, for a potential amendment to the cemeteries bylaw at this point? Yes or no?
I'm going to suggest everybody said no, because you're going down the whole thing to, right? And then you'd have to redo it again. So the last thing you want, I keep saying we don't want to repeat, right?
Well,
Right on that?
Well, basically, yeah. So if council wanted to do that, then basically Jamie would go out and undertake that process, similar to like the planning process, right? If council did not want to do that, I guess your options are, one, leave the bylaw as is and staff won't take any further action at this time, or two, if there's something further you want us to investigate before you go down the path of a potential amendment, you would want to provide that direction to Jamie, and then she could bring a follow-up report.
Go ahead, Jamie.
To Reed Bailey, an option as well could be to not open up the cemetery bylaw right now, but wait until I'm able to acquire more information, because not only change, if we extend the hours greatly or on Saturdays and during the weekdays, that is a change in service, and a change in the level of service sometimes indicates an impact financially. So if I'm able to research what that would look like, and then also grab more information as to what neighboring municipalities do. I mean, that was done in 2018, and it was seen that that the overall costs are kind of in line with similar municipalities of our size and in our area. But there's no reason why we can't do that again, to make sure that there's enough information provided to council to make a more educated decision. I mean, that's what I'm here for, is to research and provide you guys with as much information that you could possibly need to make your decisions.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I was still waiting for an answer
For,
for the question I proposed before you.
I apologize, I forgot what it was.
No, I was just curious as to, it was mentioned that our cemetery staff is part-time, and that there would be, or that they're paid overtime after 40 hours of statutory holidays. I'm just wondering, are they paid overtime, or do they get lieu of time off in a part? This is confusing to me as to.
I'm going to let one of the staff answer that first. Who would like to answer that?
Through Bailey to Councillor Faulkner, the reason why it matters is because if it's not that we can't pay the guys overtime, we can, that's no problem. It's the cost incurred to the families. So it's different price points in regards to, if you want your funeral, a full casket interment at 2 p.m. and the guys are there until 5, then you get charged one amount. If you are before that, then you get charged a different amount. So yes, I'm sorry that my report wasn't clear on that. So the guys, if the public works crew are required to stay later than needed past their 3:30 home time, they stay, just like they stay on the Saturdays if required as well.
Deputy Reed Sight?
Just as a follow-up to Councillor Faulkner's comment, is they're not part-time employees. They're full-time employees working part-time in the cemetery. So they're already scheduled to work 40 hours during their week. So if there's required to work extra, then that's the intention. That's the issue that was the issue that was obviously proposed in 2018 when they reduced the hours to 2 o'clock. They wanted to eliminate this potential for interments to go past the time when they were leaving. And rightfully or wrongfully, that's none of these issues have anything to do with the human resources policy that we indicated. Most of these issues are ESA things that are just happen no matter what. You have an employee who works overtime or is required to have statutory holidays and all that type of stuff. So I mean, we have to recognize that, as Jamie has indicated, and if staff or if council's wanting Jamie to relook at all this and look at the financial impact of this side, we also have to recognize there's a financial impact not only to cost, but we need to look at the revenue then. Right? I mean, and I mean, that is the concern back in 2018, at least some of the concern was, is that if they went past the time, then the family would pay for it if they requested it. It's on them then, not on the municipality. So the staff needs clear direction, which I think they're getting now, in the sense that, bring back all the feedback as to what we think we need to do from a true service level perspective, both from a financial impact to both, the municipality, but also our revenue side and what it could potentially do for the service of the municipality. And let council then go down that path of opening the bylaw if they so choose. I mean, that's what I think I'm hearing.
So, and if that is the case, then your potential motion would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Director of Public Works and Facilities dated June 20th, 2022 regarding proposed amendments to the North Huron Cemetery bylaw, and further that the Director of Public Works and Facilities be directed to research comparator cemetery operations data regarding level of service and hours of operation prior to Council making a decision on whether to initiate the process for a potential amendment to the cemetery bylaw.
Before we go there, Anita, you had a...
Yeah, I still don't understand why somebody who works for Public Works can't work not from 7 till 3, but from 9 till 5 or something like that. If they have to do snow removal in the winter, they work different times, so why can't they do it like that? Like, a couple of days in advance that there will be a funeral, they can dig a grave a day before that, or isn't that allowed? Or 2 days, yeah? So it's only a couple of hours on the day of the funeral that they have to work a different schedule, or maybe longer, or I don't know why that is such a problem. Because it's too personalized then for everybody, or are they afraid they're getting too many requests? Or because if there are too many requests, then there's certainly something wrong with the times we allow funerals to be there.
Yes, go ahead.
Through Reed Bailey to Councillor Van Heersum, the issues arise when it's certain seasons. So during April and during October are some of the best examples where there's issues and concerns. So yes, just you're correct on the guys work different hours when required to do winter maintenance. It depends on how nice the weather is too in April and in October and when winter decides to show up. But there are times where the guys need to come in and they need to plow, and they're in at 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and they have to come back and plow the next day. So having a funeral go past 2, yes, of course, like they always do the best that they can. But that's a long day for somebody to be in at 4 in the morning and then continue.
No, but I'm talking in July. Say we have a funeral tomorrow, and it's at 2 o'clock, then somebody can start not at 7 o'clock in the morning, but even at 12 and stay till whatever half day or as much as he needs to work.
Right.
Because in the winter you have different times to work too. So
Yep. No, and adjusting their work schedules like that is something that we can look into. Flex time. would be something that I can also research and see what can be done.
Thank you.
I'm going to suggest we've had a very robust conversation here. We have a motion on the floor. Staff does have direction. And do we want to put a time on? Because here's what I want to point out right now is we got hit right off, I think, the first or second month, Paul, and we voted this through when the other council handled it. I'm going to suggest you extend it a little further so that give the staff lots of time. Nobody should expect it to come unless somebody surprises me and we do it in 2 weeks, but I'll leave that up to the staff. But this change has been made. We'd like it, all of us, staff and council would like it done once properly and move on, taking into consideration everybody that's stepped forward and talked to us. So I just want to say that as far as timing, I'm not sure if something needs to be added, or Jamie, if you feel you've got we know that you're overloaded right now. If there's situations, just know that we would like this to come forward. And again, I'm suggesting that it's good timing because we can put it on the budget. If you need to make budget changes, it's on the budget.
My suggestion would be, so every year prior to the budget, the CAO presents a report of our strategic plan that includes additional initiatives, and basically he asks council for feedback on the timing of those initiatives. I would leave it to that process because that's a fully flushed out, established process, and as opposed to pinning a specific timing of motion, because X, Y, and Z tends to and likely will pop up at certain points. So it changes things around, but we certainly have the mechanisms in place to keep council apprised on where we're at in certain projects.
Thank you. Can you read that motion again?
So the motion on the floor would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Director of Public Works and Facilities dated June 20th, 2022 regarding proposed amendments to the North Huron Cemetery bylaw, and further that the Director of Public Works and Facilities be directed to research comparator cemetery operations data regarding level of service and hours of operation prior to council making a decision on whether to initiate the process for a potential amendment to the cemetery bylaw.
Do I have a mover? I need a move. Seconder, please. Paul seconds. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. Okay, I think you're up again. 7.4.2, the North Huron Asset Management Plan, Citywide Report and Presentation. The council have questions, comments, or concerns on this one?
So Jamie actually does have a PowerPoint.
I apologize, Jamie.
On this thing?
Yep. Yeah, if you hit escape there, Jamie, it's on the desktop.
I don't know if I moved that. Okay, so the document that was provided to you is quite large, and it's over 200 pages of data and a lot of financial information. And there was a presentation by Darcy, I believe in January, going over the asset management plan. So I'm not as eloquent as Darcy, so my apologies. Should I move this like it's off? Like
Yeah, yeah.
this
if,
thing?
If you can get it to fit on there, but it might not. Like that might be as good as you can get it.
Oh, I didn't think I just wrecked it. I'm so sorry.
You're fine. You're on.
Okay.
Council also has it in their packages.
Okay. So in terms of our presentation, the agenda will be what is asset management, what is included under the Ontario Regulation 588-17, what are the key findings of this asset management plan, and what are the key recommendations, and finally, what should be taken into account when discussing the concept of levels of service for future plans. So, To define asset management, it is a service management, a service management because the asset is the conduit for the service, and therefore assets won't have any function value if they are not supporting infrastructure service delivery. So basically, assets can be seen as the backbone of infrastructure service delivery. For example, for a town to provide a transportation service, it needs to have roads, sidewalks, and other supporting assets to enable this service. Some examples, same applies to manholes, mains, and treatment plants that are the enablers for water and wastewater services. This is why it is essential to always keep in mind that we are managing these assets with the end goal of providing sustainable services. In terms of the Ontario regulation requirements, they are split into 4 key milestones. The first one was to adapt a strategy asset management policy by July of 2019 to demonstrate the council's buy-in in developing an asset management program. The second and third ones, which are the focus of today's presentation, is to develop an asset management plan focusing on core assets such as roads, bridges, water, and wastewater, as well as non-core assets such as buildings, land improvements, etc. While focusing on the current level of service, current inventory analysis, current performance of assets and life cycle activities required to maintain the current level of service, the plan also includes some discussion on the impact of growth on current levels of service. The fourth milestone takes the program to another level as it requires the township to start thinking about proposed desired levels of service and what is required to achieve these levels of service in terms of strategies and financial resources. So the plan that we have developed as part of this project, which is a plan that satisfies the 2024 requirements, we asked ourselves a few key questions. What is the current state of municipal infrastructure? In other terms, what is the condition? What process improvements can increase confidence and analysis and decision-making? Updates to the inventory with more accurate replacement costs and condition scores that we use to analyze the criticality of assets. What is the municipality's financial capacity to meet long-term capital requirements? Also by comparing sustainable sources of funding to the annual requirements required to maintain the current level of service based on the best available data. It is also key to note that only sustainable sources of funding were analyzed, such as taxes, user fees, OSIF, and provincial gas tax. Therefore, one-time grants were not included in the analysis as they were not considered sustainable sources of funding by the Ontario regulations. Again, based on the best available data at the time of analysis, the calculated total replacement cost of the township asset portfolio sums up to $286 million, with $80 million for the sanitary network, $60 million for the water network, and $54 million for the road infrastructure. The remaining sum is distributed over the other asset categories as seen here. Of note, if the total asset portfolio was divided by our current households, each household would owe $125,000. In terms of asset conditions, 65% of all assets weighed by replacement cost are in fair or better condition, which is a good indication. However, for the assets that have used age-based condition, such as buildings, it is recommended to start collecting assessed condition as it is more accurate than age-based. And at the time that all of the information and data was being gathered, we do have building condition assessments. We did complete those back in 2021, but they have not been able to be incorporated into the citywide software. The following graph is a representation of the capital work requirements, whether it is replacement or rehabilitation related. The stacked bars represent 5-year brackets, and the average annual capital requirements sum up to $6.5 million, which means that in order to continue to provide the current levels of service, an average annual capital spending of $6.5 million is required. Around 4 million of the 6.5 million are required for tax-funded assets and sustainable sources of funding, some up to about over 700,000, which results in a deficit of $3.8 million. Furthermore, around 2 million of the 6.5 million is required for rate-funded assets and sustainable sources of funding, sum up to a bit more than $550,000, which results in a deficit of $1.4 million. So the rate-funded assets are our water and sanitary networks. So this slide goes over just the annual tax rate increases and changes over the 20 years. And the township's water network has, there's a few bullet points there. The deficit for tax-funded assets is $3.8 million, and it was recommended that taxes be raised by additional 2.4 for the next 20 years. And then it goes on to include another 3.1 for the sanitary network over the next 15 to 20 years. And then adjustments to the tax and tax rates should be supplemented with project prioritization and evaluation of desired levels of service. So these are the key program recommendations that they provided to the township. Continuous refinement of core and non-core asset inventory data. That is one of the main reasons why the asset management coordinator position was put out. They will be able to undertake this task and move forward by providing additional information, and therefore have a better confidence in our data, and especially in citywide. Another recommendation is evaluate and update life cycle strategies and replacement costs. So as we move forward in replacing different types of assets within our township, we'll have better costs that we can associate with those items, therefore providing a clearer amount that we are required in order to continually update or replace those different types of assets. Number 3 is the evaluations of levels of service. This is a discussion held at the council table. So we would continue to collect current levels of service data across all asset categories, and then also come back and discuss proposed changes to those levels of service. And then the last point there is to integrate growth considerations into asset management practices. In the Ontario regulation, in 2025, the asset management plan has to consider growth in its life cycle management and financial strategies. So the final slide kind of shows, the final slide shows what a level of service looks like. So it's what it takes, what it costs, what it costs for the asset, what it costs to perform the asset, and what the risk is overall if those aren't completed. So that would give you your level of service. So if we'll know the cost of a chunk of water main, will determine its performance. So if it's providing water to 100 homes, it should always provide water to 100 homes with, that meet all the regulations. And then the risk is what happens to it if it doesn't work anymore. Therefore, we will not be providing water to those 100 homes. There might be issues, and there might be consequences to the road. So that would be the water main's level of service. So the recommendation would be for the Council of the Township of North Huron, that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives a report prepared by Citywide and presented by the Director of Public Works and Facilities dated June 20th, 2022, titled 2022 Asset Management Plan for information, and further that Council direct the clerk to prepare a bylaw adopting amendments to the Township of North Huron's Asset Management Plan as presented at the July 4th, 2022 regular council meeting. By doing this, we will be in compliance with the Ontario regulation for the asset management plan.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Jamie, if I understand this before I throw it out to council, you're asking us to pass a motion tonight that would,
The motion you would adopt tonight would bring your asset management plan back to be adopted by bylaw.
because from everything I've just read, we're looking at an 8% tax increase every year for this section of our.
That's just, the data is just what the plan is telling you.
Mhm.
It's not like when you adopt this plan, you are bound to incorporate that in your future budgets.
Okay. But here's the interesting part. We need to, right? If a good business says you need 8% a year to replace your equipment. If you don't replace your equipment, you're gonna close your factory. So this one obviously cannot be done overnight. We're not gonna do it this year at 8% because you gotta add on your operating fees too. So now you're up to 16% every year, year after year. This is something that's really needed as we move forward because the federal and provincial governments are not going to give us money or donations or anything else, any way you want it, unless we have this in place. That is the main reason you're seeing this tonight. This is truly very important so that when we apply for any funding from upper tier government, they can say, well, how have you been spending your money? Where do you know you need to spend it? And therefore, you're doing a good job, boys and girls. So yes, you can have a little of our cake. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you. Three of you. I'm just curious, this report was a Township of North Huron initiated report that we had to do on our own. And I'm just curious as why the breakdown and then the taxes, as they're broken out, aren't as we charge our constituents or our ratepayers. They're not laid out the same way. We got, deficit for water and sewer. They're on a separate bill. They're not on our taxes. We pay a separate water and sewer bill. Plus, we pay a surplus on top for future improvement. But now you're asking for 8% on top of that. Why isn't that shown in here? Why isn't that in the equation? Because are the numbers here under taxes? Is that the full amount, or is that our fund for improving later? The numbers don't seem to. We don't show any assets that we're planning for or saving for in this report.
Yeah, I believe Jamie did start with the only funding they're only including the funding as if it was from the taxes. That's why I brought it up. So
we need 8%, then we don't need 8%.
But then I'm going to ask Jamie the same thing because I understand what you're saying. So the money that we collect for the water and sewer, my understanding is that is not in these equations. That has to be added to the equation, so that would reduce the 8%. Am I right on that? I believe that's what you're asking, isn't it, Kevin?
Well, yeah, and it's only charged to some of our tax base. It's not cross-border. Doesn't get to pay. It doesn't have to pay the savings fund. Or I'm just curious how they worked out these numbers when we don't calculate them that way.
Through Ray Bailey to Councillor Faulkner, What they did was they took the overall cost for the water and the sewer, and they saw what was coming in for user rates. And out of all of the assets that we have, based off of the data that we currently have in citywide, we would need to increase the sewer or the water rates by those additional percentages. So, they would have looked at that over the 20 years, I believe, that they provided that. And this was a township initiative. We worked very closely with Citywide, who is our asset management software, and they're the ones that worked very closely with Donna White, our former director of finance. So what they did was they just took the money that was required for all of the assets that we had over the next 20 years and dispersed it as a percentage. Does that help?
Yeah, I'm just curious why we're $1.4 million annual deficit on a water network that we're paying user fee and upgrade fees on.
Yeah, because it's not enough. Even though our residents are paying user fees and capital charges, it's not enough for the amount of assets that we have.
But it's just for that asset, though. This has been broken out just for those assets. It's not in the other equation for $3,800,000. That's not a total. You have to add up in the 1.4 on top of that to get their total. Okay, is that not in the slide with the bridges, buildings, information technology, machinery, roadwork, storm vehicles? No? Okay, so that's a combined between the two for 8%.
Go ahead, Trevor.
We have an infrastructure deficit of $5.2 million. So when we set our rates, our water and sewer rates, a year ago, based on conversations with BM Ross, they said we need to increase our rates by 7%. They told us full out that was not enough. Like, that's not enough to cover what our infrastructure deficit was for water and sewer. So I mean, the one thing that you have to recognize, and I understand why they do it this way, but it's a shell shock game. There isn't a municipality between here in Tobermory and even Thunder Bay or further that isn't going to go looking for money for the majority of the high-level infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, buildings. Those are massive, massive dollar amounts. And there isn't a municipality for anywhere. Probably the city of Toronto isn't even one of them. They're all going to ask for the provincial government or the federal government for some support in in rebuilding these infrastructures. To indicate that $5.2 million is going to be absorbed by the ratepayers of North Huron is not going to happen. It's not. There isn't. I mean, you want to talk about somebody having a line of people walking through the door? That's what would happen. I mean, saying to every household you have to put $125,000 on top of your mortgage to the municipality to cover our infrastructure deficit isn't going to happen. And I want to make sure we're very clear. Some of the reason why we have this infrastructure deficit is because councils 50 years ago didn't do what we should have been doing now. And I'm not saying that's a negative thing. I'm saying that's what they had at the time and that's what they had to deal with. So, I mean, what we have to recognize is the more apt that we are in making sure we have our operations to the most efficient way we can have them is going to help us saving some extra cash for capital improvements. And I think the major ones that we got to talk about, The ones that I'm a little concerned about from the report that I seen is the ones that are more than 50% very poor condition. Those are the ones I am, and one of them is information technology, our computer system. You want to talk about an issue in the sense of where we are as a municipality in the 21st century when information technology is the way of the world, and we have over 65% of our assets that are in very poor condition. That's a very big concern for me. There would be a ton of people that would argue that our road network is a lot worse than it says here on certain streets or on certain roads. But I think we take the data, what we've got. This is more data than we've ever had before. So I think we have to utilize it for the best interest. But to say to anybody and to say to any council that you're going to change your habits and all of a sudden increase our annual capital reserve to $6 million, it isn't happening, Reeve. It's not happening for anybody. There isn't a council in the world that's going to put it up that much because, again, you can only take blood you can't take blood from a stone. And if you continue to try to do that, you're going to have issues as it relates to more problems, not less problems. So, I mean, we have to recognize that everything, this report has told us the same thing that BM Ross told us about water and sewer 8 months ago. It's the same report that Donna White, the Director of Finance, told us 4 years ago. And it's the same report that somebody told me 7 years ago. It's not changed. It's just compounding the inevitable that you're absolutely right, Reeve. We're going to have to get better at understanding our need versus our want, and understanding that if there's assets that we don't need, that we don't have them. And go back to the approach that if you need it for level of service, great. If you don't, get rid of it. Because again, as anybody would say, oh, it doesn't cost us much to have that asset. Well, I'll tell you right now, this report's telling you a different story.
Paul?
Yes, thank you, Raven.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yes, this is Jamie. Just a question on page 8 of the second PowerPoint there. It just says forecasted capital requirements, and the big one again, as we just mentioned, the buildings. And then we have the waterworks. And then could you just mention what the land improvements are? I'm sorry, I just couldn't seem to find what that is, land improvements.
I believe that was, I can pull it right from the report. I don't want to get it wrong.
Like the buildings is a big chunk, and the waterworks is the next, it's about half the amount, and then another half of the amount part is the land improvements. It's more than the bridges and machinery and equipment and vehicles need. I just wondering where that falls in our municipality.
Sure. So specifically for land improvements, it is defined in the asset management plan overall as parking lots for municipal facilities, fencing and signage, and miscellaneous landscaping and other assets. So some of the subs, like the asset segments that are here are like the arena, the cemeteries, the daycare, the fire department, general government, parks, and then sanitary sewer, streetlights, and waste for land improvements, which the landfill is like large, but the streetlights themselves, there's a significant amount of streetlights, and they're not just incorporated into like the road network. They're under land improvements.
Okay, and then another.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. And then on the buildings part, I'm just curious. You said some things haven't been put into place yet, in that the numbers there. Is that like the public works buildings down in Blythe, like the used, the old ones, the old public works, and let's say behind the hall, back here, the old police station, is that come out of that yet?
So through Reed Bailey to Councillor Heffer, let me clarify, I guess, what I meant. We have condition assessments that were completed through our BCA process, and those conditions haven't been incorporated into the data sets in citywide. But the overall costs for all of the buildings and age-based replacement values and costs, those are all put into citywide. They're all already there. So it's just the condition parts that would change the overall asset, or the condition, no, I'm trying to think of better words. The overall need to replace or repair would be further filtered out once those conditions are plugged in.
Thank you very much.
So the bottom line really is, in the old days, when the sewer broke, we'd replace it. When the water quit working, we'd dig it up. When the pavement got so bad, we were breaking springs, we would do it. This is putting us in a position, the beginning of a position, which is the hardest place to be because you want to keep your company going at the same time you realize you have to upgrade. This is putting you in a position that rather than wait till somebody calls you in the middle of the night and says, my toilet doesn't flush, we know right now we have this asset management, and we know that we can go and say, this is the worst, this is where we need to start. That's my understanding where this journey is going to end up when we're done with it. And then the other thing you have to notice again is we don't replace anything, and we don't fix, and not, when I say we, I'm talking 100 years of some sewer lines and that, and it's traditionally been when we have a leak or a problem, we dig that street up and we take care of that street. This is putting us in a position where they say, you know that these facilities are running out, so you put this money aside now. No, at the very beginning we can't, because to make things worse, on top of needing that money, you also have to keep the vehicle you've got going. So you've got a double whammy, right? So you're putting money away to replace the vehicle 10 years down the road, but all of a sudden you put a motor in it. So this is the hardest part of it. 20 years from now, it's going to be okay for I would think, for the councils then. But this is something, again, that this is very important, and this gets us on a situation where, like, if you need a new fire truck, why would we put the taxpayers in debt for $5 million? Why wouldn't we put $50,000 a year aside for it, build towards it, because you know the fire truck's going to run out? Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you, Reeve. My comment goes back to the original of how it's paid for. Taxpayers don't know how the fund is doing on their water and sewer levy for future improvements. So they don't know whether that money is the proper money or it's not the proper money going forward. All they get hit with is the information that we're not going to have enough when we get to the end of it. They're going to go, well, why am I putting money into it now if it's not going to be enough when they get to the end of it anyway? So it would be nice to know, broken down in pieces that the taxpayers can see if they're making headway or not. It's like a bank account, putting money in the bank account, but if nobody knows the total.
You're talking checks and balances, right?
Yeah.
There should be checks and balances there to make sure that we're not sending the money to the wrong location. Go ahead, Jamie.
For council, so this is all being completed, and we're not the only municipality in this boat. Every municipality, all 444 of us, have a funding gap and a deficit for a lot of our assets. But this is trying to meet the Ontario regulations that are for these requirements, and it is a good way for council to be able to show their constituents, this is why your tax dollars are the way they are, and also here's our way to try to get grant funding in the future for our projects. I mean, this is one way to show that we don't, and to show the provincial government and the federal government that we don't have enough to cover what we need, and hopefully the grant funding we will be able to provide, we are saving, we're trying, there's municipalities that have nothing in their coffers. So if we can show them that, yes, we're putting something away, this is what our tax base is, then there should be hopefully more willing to provide us that funding that's required for us to meet and do our replacements and our upgrades to our infrastructure.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns, comments for Jamie on this one? Not seeing any. I'm not sure if I had a motion.
I will move, do you have a motion there, Carson? Is there a mover and a seconder? I don't think there is.
There is no mover or
I will
seconder.
move the recommended motion, Reeve.
Okay. Seconder, please. Paul seconds. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. And thank you for that, Jamie. Okay, 7.4.3 is appointment of interim chief building officials. Again, the motion's on there. Is there any questions for Jamie? Did you want to speak to this, Jamie, or just not? It's just any questions for Jamie on this? Not seeing any. Do I have a mover?
I will move, Reeve.
Okay, and Kevin Faulkner seconds. All in favor? Carries. Thank you, Jamie. Fire Department, no reports. CAO, let me flip the page and see. On 7.6.1 is a hearing, Pioneer Thrashers and Hobbies Association request. Can I have a mover? I have Anita moving. Can I have a seconder? Rick seconds. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Kevin.
Through you, Reeve, to CAOs, this is a new request, it's not a historic request. Am I right in saying, like, I've never seen this come across from that organization. And I'm just wondering if it's in direct competition with other service clubs that traditionally held that portion of the event.
Okay, Jamie. Denise is here, and she says she's going to answer that for us.
Yeah. Through you, Reeve, to Councillor Faulkner, actually, historically, this is a similar request. They did not serve alcohol over the last 2 years just because their event was actually historically different. But previous to that, they had been serving alcohol in the hall upstairs in Blythe.
Okay, that's new to me, but
Go ahead, Rick.
Thanks to you, Reeve Bailey, to Denise. Who carried the license?
yeah.
So the Huron Pioneer Threshers actually has applied, and they have their own.
Their own license?
Correct.
For this time around?
No, they've had it for consecutive years. It's due 2025.
Aware of that.
News to me.
Denise, maybe if you could do a follow-up and just...
Of course.
And report back, because I have a couple of councilors here that are questioning that.
You bet. The group is very approachable, so I will definitely look into that right away.
Thank you.
Sorry, Reeve, I guess my question is what does it matter? What does it matter whether it's held by the Huron County Thrashers? It's their event. If they want to hold the liquor license rather than give it to a community group, that is their prerogative. I mean, I don't understand what's the point. I mean, if we're concerned that they're having, if we're concerned about providing them a significant municipal significance, they have to go through the process of applying through the AGCO and have to meet all of the regulations that the AGCO does. Those regulations aren't ours. We don't hold that card. So as long as they provide the insurance and all that other stuff that meets, I don't understand why it matters who holds the license. As long as they're meeting all the regulations from the AGCO, good for them. That's my comment.
Not knowing much about it, Denise is going to speak to it again.
So through the AGCO, through you, Reeve, to Deputy Reeve Sipe. Through the AGCO, to apply for a license, you have to be deemed municipally significant. So that is their request, and then they are able to obtain their own license.
Yeah, just to me, I'm not commenting to their request. What I'm questioning is the questions from counselors as to why they're holding, why, or who it is, or what's the purpose of it. It doesn't, in my opinion, we deal with what we have in front of us, and they're requesting it. I personally don't care who holds the license. If they want it, good for them to have it. I mean, they're gonna follow the process they have to follow to get it.
And I believe we're just going to make sure they are. Okay, thank you, Denise. I just got a nod from Denise, that's what it's about. Okay. Okay, so I believe I have a mover and a second for that. Any other questions or comments or concerns? Not seeing any. I call the motion. All in favor? Carried. Okay, let's go down to 7.6.2, Wingham Firefighters Association Canada Fireworks. Do I have a mover? Paul moves, seconder, please. Trevor Sipes seconds. Any questions, concerns, or comments for Denise? Not seeing any. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Correspondent, Dwayne is going to speak to the first 8.1 Marklovich appeal for decision of building matter complaint. Dwayne, it's the floor is yours.
Thanks, Your Worship. So in April, I believe it was the 7th, 2022, there was a complaint received by the municipality regarding, it was reported on the complaint as a building that was being constructed illegally on a property. Staff investigated the matter and conducted a site inspection and did not see a building on site. However, they did note a trellis on the property. So there was a subsequent follow-up request or appeal to myself in terms of indicating that there was a violation of the building code. Again, staff were sent out, conducted a visit on site. Staff did not observe a building, but again, they did note a trellis on the property. And the chief building official indicated that the building permit was not required for the trellis. And as such, no further action was taken. The individual under the complaint handling process of the municipality has filed an appeal of the decision of myself in terms of that there is no violation of the Ontario Building Code to council, so there's a procedure to be followed, and the individual has followed accordingly. So for added, my own, I did reach out to another building official just to get a second opinion, and the individual did respond back and indicated that, did review the matter and indicated that he agrees that no building permit would be required on the basis that the trellis or the structure is not capable of holding snow. And further just commented in terms of, you know, building officials don't make deck structures, kind of an aside note, compliant with the zoning that are less than 24 inches from grade. So the bottom line in this situation is that you have the opinion of two chief building officials who are both advising that there's no violation of the Ontario Building Code and that the trellis that is present is fine.
Thank you. Any questions for CAO? Not see. Go ahead, Anita.
Well, I don't really have, it's not really a question, it's more how the procedure normally works. So if we get an appeal on a complaint, then it will come before council? Or because this person wrote a letter to council, that we have it in front of us? Normally a complaint is confidential, isn't it? But why does this person come to?
Do you want to what? Yeah.
So this stems from the new policy council adopted in 2021. So if you remember, at the same time, we adopted a customer service standards policy and then the complaint handling policy. And so the purpose of that was to really flush out an established process for complaints to be dealt with. And so basically the policy sets out timelines So as council is aware, everything goes through the complaints at North Huron email address. It's dispersed out to the department. The department addresses that, and there's timelines associated with that. If the complainant is not satisfied with the department head's decision or the relevant department's decision, then they make that appeal to the CAO, which happened in this case. So they appealed to the CAO,
Yeah.
and then was still not satisfied with the CAO's decision, and then so ultimately the policy says if that's still the case, then the appeal comes to council. So that is kind of the process that has played out,
Okay.
and they've taken their way through the complaint handling policy, which is why you see that now.
Okay.
Council certainly wouldn't see it if it was it went through the complaints at North Huron email address, and then was dealt with by a department, and follow-up occurred, and everyone was satisfied, or it's considered resolved. But this is the mechanism that council has put in place through that policy to make sure that there are appeal processes in place, I guess.
Okay.
Not seeing any other questions. I don't believe we need a motion or anything for that, do we?
So, pending no direction from council, we would reaffirm that, I guess, staff's decision is final. But that being said, there may be benefit in council passing a motion to receive it for information or something along those lines, or directing, we can certainly send a council resolution letter to the individual, letting them know of the decision of council as well.
Council, what's your choice? Send a letter? Go ahead, Trevor.
Well, I think if he's appealing to the North Huron Council, council needs to send a letter back indicating that we've reviewed the information. Based on the information we've received from the CAO and the chief building official, as well as a secondary source, we are deeming it not that we're not going to carry forward anything other than what you've already heard. I think that's we have to do that as the fact that he's appealing to North Huron Council.
Through your worship, in terms of, I put together a motion, I guess, for council's consideration, that council hereby receives the appeal from the individual regarding the CAO's decision on the building complaint matter, and further, the council receives additional information from the CAO regarding this matter, and further, the council hereby upholds the CAO's decision and directs staff to notify the appellant of council's decision.
Do I have a mover?
I will.
Paul moves, seconder, please. Rick seconds. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Council reports, Ree's report. I was thinking I was a county the other day, and I was just sitting there thinking we were going through some new homes and some new subdivisions and some buildings that need to go up that we all know we truly need. And I just want my council to know that there was a lot of pushback at the county level too. So everybody seems to know they need it, but I guess if you don't need it, you don't want it in your own backyard, or you don't want anything to do with it if you've got your own home. So just let you know, it's just not us. It's just kind of a universal thing people like to push back on. On the Vance's Fund, we did a photo op this morning at the hospital. Vance's first donation to go out on their fund was to the hospital for new equipment they're getting. And although I held that great big sign up for all that time, I forget how much it was. I'm going to say $69,000. It was awful heavy anyway. So we did put the first one out. The schools, there will be different children helped at the high school. Children that are going into university or college will be able to apply for the fund. I believe we've set it up so as many as 20 children a year can be helped. And further years, they could be helped too if they reapply for it and stay in school and meet all the criteria. Then, of course, there's the walking trails, which the township itself's got involved in a bit. We're advertising and gathering information on recreation facilities that may want to, including ourselves, that may want to use that. And the church donation, the first one will be going out to the United Church, which the Vances were longtime members of. I believe it's for painting the inside of the steeple. I believe it was. That was a month ago that took place, so I just can't quite remember what it's something like that. So again, every year there will be around $400,000 out of the fund to donate to those 4 projects: churches, recreation, schools, and not only hospitals, but medical facilities of all kind, because we feel as a group that people from Wingham could be going to Lucknow so maybe we could help Lucknow, or people could be taking their children down to London for cancer treatments and that, so that will be reached out to, that there will be availability for that kind of stuff. So it's good to have it going, and it's a fantastic gesture on behalf of the Vances, and we're quite pleased with it. We are still receiving a lot of interest on it from developers. Dimitri's doing a great job of following up. Again, today I got 2 different notices of companies who would like to come and explore our area and see if there's future development that they would be interested in. So we are moving ahead with development we have on the go now, but be assured that it's not going to come to a stop. One thing I would like to say tonight. Somebody on news said that COVID's gone, and I'm very happy. But I want to ask that the municipality understand that the council and the staff have been under COVID-19 restrictions for 2 years now. And we have done our part. We put over 3,000 people through the arena to give them shots so that we could all be safer. And thanks to the municipality of Howick for helping us out with that. But bear with us, because we can't go back to normal overnight. I understand that there's a lot of things that need to be done, and people can't understand why they're not done right away. I've had many, many, many conversations. Please be assured, the public, that we are moving forward, we are getting up and going, but we have been beaten down for 2 years. And we did not do everything during those 2 years. We were doing minimal operations because of COVID, because we did not want to put a staff member in a situation where he would get sick or pass on because of the sickness. So we did what we had to do to keep the town running. At the same time, we are now, God willing, we're not going to run into a snowball in August, but we are getting up and going. Just be patient with us. We will do the best we can. The staff is working very hard, and I appreciate everybody's efforts. Thank you very kindly. Committee member reports. Anybody that sits on a board or a committee, is there anyone that would like to speak to anything? Rick?
Yes, thank you, Lee Bailey. In regards to our CHIP group, our farm safety video has been completed. Jamie Stanley, along with Huron County Warden Glenn McNeil and Acting Inspector Ryan Olson, they've received quite a few views on this, and it's on the OPP Twitter page, if anyone's interested.
Thank you very kindly.
That's that little short report.
Thank you. Anyone else sitting on the committee that would like to speak to anything? Go ahead, Deputy Reeve Syke.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. I have a couple of comments. So the Wingham BIA has been actively continuing on with, supporting the local downtown with some of their initiatives. There is actually some further conversation as to the LED sign and the potential, and I say potential, another LED sign in the town limits, which will allow residents to actually see what's on the LED sign as opposed to when they're only coming into town. Because of most of the events that are on that sign are events within the local municipality, so they're trying to understand and satisfy everybody in that regard. So that's in the initial, development process. There was a partner project with Midwestern newspapers as it relates to economic development, poster with advertising, basically showing, hot spots in the local municipality, both in Blythe and in Wingham. That has been looking to be completed, hopefully within the next, a couple of months, I'm hearing from Doug and the group as to, and hopefully get those out into submission or out into distribution so that, you know, the people, and the group is that is it was work, partnership between the BIA and Midwestern newspapers. They looked at supplying the advertising. The BIA supplied all the artistic and all the you know, mapping and all that stuff as it relates to economic development within the municipality. From a BIA perspective, there has been many communications as to, you know, the branding of Wingham for music. They're working on getting some, you know, it looks like potentially that there was some delays in that type of stuff for those banners. There was 25 banners that were going to be produced and put up with the Canadian flags. They have been delayed only because of the material that isn't available. So rest assured that the Canadian flags will be up for Canada Day weekend. We had that meeting last week, so that Doug was waiting as long as he could to have conversations with Public Works to ensure that Public Works was only going up once, not twice, which I think, you know, Director of Public Works would be more than happy with help with that. So rest assured to the residents of North Huron that down in the town of Wingham, and I think in Blythe, if not, the Canadian flags will be presented. I know for the Wingham BIA, they will be in the town of Wingham for sure. That's really been what the work has been doing and going on with the Wingham BIA. There's been lots of work associated to, you know, supporting the downtown, trying to figure out how we can properly make economic development a driver in the municipality. So I think the group is working well. Ashley is the new, I can't remember her last name, so I hope she's forgives me. But she's the retail promotions individual who's been doing an exceptional work trying to make sure that, you know, the events for retailers down the main street or main downtown are being promoted and are being valued by the users and the retailers in the market. So I did want to mention, my last thing is the Wingham Community Connectors. The Wingham Community Connectors, although it's not a committee, me and the Councillor Heffer have been sitting on that as volunteers to bring back some information as relates to that group. That group is actively working on a volunteer fair on September 11th between the hours of 1 and 4 at the Wingham Columbus Center. So we just had a meeting last week, and I think we already have 10, maybe even 11 confirmed, and not necessarily confirmed paid, but at least 11 community groups, local people wanting to have a table at that event. That event is in conjunction with the United Way of here in Perth, with their reopening or their opening of the Connection Center here in Wingham. The location of that is yet to be made public. Obviously, they're going through their process there. So I just did want to make sure, and that is then the Wingham Community Connectors' biggest goal is to get a volunteer fair that was terminated when COVID hit immediately, and I think it's a great initiative that the group is portrayed going forward.
Thank you, Deputy Site. Anyone else? Okay, not seeing anyone. Notice of motion, we have none tonight.
You skip comments.
I skipped comments by members. Thank you, Carson. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you. Through your rate, received a message to council from the Blythe Repository for History. It says, good afternoon. As you will see in the letter attached, the committee members of the Blythe Repository of History, which is housed in the back office of the Citizen in Blythe, are willing to accept any items related to Blythe, since the North Huron Museum is moving into a smaller venue where the space will be at a premium. If this discussion comes up at council meeting, the members of the BRH ask for your support on this matter. It is our purpose to protect the information about our past for our future. you'd like to know more about the holdings of the BRH and to see it for yourself, please drop by the Citizens Office. And Deb Schuldeis will direct you to the room where the ongoing process of organizing the information on the Blythe's local history is attended to by volunteers. Thank you for your support. And that was sent in by Cheryl Cronin. So the letter, I believe, is being sent in is the Blythe Repository of History. Greetings from the Blythe Repository of History. It is our understanding that the North Huron Museum is being located to a smaller venue where it has been used in the past. We respectfully request that any material pertaining to Blythe that would not fit in the new location be transferred to the facility in Blythe, which is also located in North Huron. And that's by David Sparling, Chair, Deb Schuldeis, Treasurer, Karen Webster, Secretary, Cheryl Cronin, Keith Ralston, Board members. Thank you.
And I guess just to build on that, so the township did receive that second letter, and the Director of Recreation is planning a follow-up report for a future meeting stemming from that letter. Just so council's in the loop.
Okay, go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. I did want to take an opportunity to thank the Blythe Firefighters Association, the Lions Club of Blythe, as well as the committee, all of the committee members for the Blythe Rutabaga Festival that was held this past weekend. I had the lovely honor of taking my 2 young children to that festival. They always loved the whole conversation about what is a rutabaga. They didn't necessarily know what a rutabaga was. Neither did I, in the sense of having to teach them what it was. But I mean, we were able to show them, a rutabaga. We were able to participate in the children's zone. We were able to, participate and see the boat, the bed race, and that type of stuff. I mean, it was other than obviously the weather, which you can't always, control. It wasn't raining. However, it was fairly windy and it was kind of cool. But I mean, ultimately, from what I've seen, the event went off without a hitch. There's a lot of things going on in Blythe. There was a ton of traffic. The campground was being utilized. There was lots of things going on in Blythe, and I think, when me and my wife talked to one of the organizers, they indicated that their intention is that, every 5 years they would make it that large of an event, and annually maybe not such an event of such magnitude. There was a lot going on. Like if you didn't know what was all going on, you may have missed out. And I mean, I think ultimately, the music, everything that was being done was done and to be done with volunteers and support from the local, the Lions Club and those types of things. I really appreciated what they did, and I took in the organization with my family, so I was happy to see that get such a great response from not only the local community, but just to understand what it all was. Because I mean, that was the first time that I had been able to participate in it with my family. So I just want to say thank you to them and thank you to the organizers for that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, for you, Reeve. I got a question. I believe this will be going to Jamie. This time last year, we had an issue with gypsy moths. I haven't seen nothing this year as of yet, but anyway, is there any intention of spraying, and if so?
Daily to Councilor McBurney. No, there's no plans on spraying for gypsy moths. I know they're usually on a cycle, so I can dig up some more information for you and provide that.
Okay.
Have you found an infestation in your area?
Well, I've had 3 trees last year. I thought they were going to go, but they seem to be doing all right this year, but I was just curious. Yep.
Anyone else?
I got another comment.
Yes, go ahead,
Yeah,
sir.
again, through you, Billy. In regards to that Rutabaga Fest, I had the opportunity to try one of these Rutabaga donuts, and that was pretty dang tasty.
Yeah,
Just one?
yeah.
Just one. Oh, that's all you brought over from them.
Okay. Okay, if that's it for comments, we'll move on. Notice of motion. I don't see one here. Does anybody have a notice of motion? Not seeing any. Bylaws, bylaw number 63-2022, site plan control bylaw. Do I have a mover? Paul moves, Kevin seconds, all in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 64-2022, right to disconnect policy. Do I have a mover? Anita moves, Trevor seconds, all in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 65-2022, zoning bylaw amendment. Do I have a mover? Paul moves, Kevin seconds, all in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 66-2022, appointment for interim chief building inspector. Do I have a mover? Anita moves, Rick seconds, all in favor? Carries. Bylaw number 67-2022, consulting service agreement with RSM Building Consultants, Inc. Do I have a mover? Rick moves, seconder please, Paul seconds, everybody in favor? Carries. Announcements, the next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, July 4th, 2022 at 6 p.m. at the North Huron Town Hall Theater. The next Police Services Board meeting will be held on Tuesday, June 21st, 2022 at 7 p.m. at the North Huron Town Hall Theater. The next Economic Development Recovery Committee meeting will be held on Thursday, July 21st, 2022 at 2 p.m. in the Town Hall Theater here. The next Wingham BIA Board meeting will be held on Thursday, August 8th, 2022 at 6:30 in the Hot Stove Lounge at the North Huron West Cass Community Complex. The next Blythe BIA meeting will be held on Thursday, June 30th, 2022 at 8 a.m. at the Blythe District Community Center. Other business. I'm not seeing any. Closed session and reporting out that the Council of the Township of North...
Repealer, I'm actually going to amend the closed session and reporting out motion. So I won't be in attendance for the closed session, so it'll just be the CAO actually. And so he will take minutes through his authority as the deputy clerk.
Yeah.
So basically, your new motion would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby proceeds at 8:16 p.m. to an in-camera session closed to the public under Section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act to discuss the following: personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, for a personnel matter, and for that CAO Evans remain in attendance.
Do I have a mover? I have Trevor moving, Paul seconding, all in favor? Carries. Thank you. Let's take a 5-minute break.